So they sit there in their places, doing off camera, and they're like sticking pens up their noses and like doing all sorts of stuff, putting, bottles on their heads to try to distract me when I'm doing my close-ups, right? So I'm thinking there, I don't know who Emilio is. He's Emilio Estevez, he's Judd Nelson. I don't know who these guys are. And this is exactly what I did. I said, you guys would have been great when Martin Sheen's on Apocalypse Now and he's having his heart attack and you would have been stuffing pens up your noses and laughing at him and just pointing fingers at him. And here he is going, ha, 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 I need your help. And you just would have been laughing. And then Emilio's face totally went white. I mean, totally went white. And I looked at him and John came up to me, Hughes, and he whispers in my ear, Martin Sheen is Emilio Estevez's father. I'm going.
Navigating through the chaos of these modern days. Oh, lost in the radio.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Radio Labyrinth.
I listen to your conversations. You don't know that, but I do. I am the eyes and ears of this institution, my friends. By the way, that clock's 20 minutes fast.
Please be quiet. We don't want to announce to everyone that she has her period.
Guess those guys that thought we had to get married feel pretty stupid right about now, huh, Padre? Tell me something. What's a beautiful broad like you doing with a malacca like this, huh?
She's into malaccas, Dino.
She's into malacas. Do you believe that?
This week, we're joined by the incomparable John Kapelos. He's an actor, a writer, a director, and a producer whose career has spanned decades on stage and screen, from his iconic role as Carl the Janitor in The Breakfast Club to memorable performances in shows like The Umbrella Academy, Seinfeld, countless films, Justified, and a lot more. John has a built-in reputation of one of Hollywood's most versatile and reliable character actors with roots in the Second City. He brings humor, depth, and authenticity to every role. Today, he's joining us as we celebrate the 40th anniversary of The Breakfast Club.
Hey, there he is.
There he is.
Yay!
Hello.
Hey there.
Well, Jeff, do you want to get us started?
Yeah, I just wanted to hear about your origins at Second City and who was in your class. And I understood you were taught by John Candy some.
I was born in Canada, and I went to university in Ottawa. And I think the last year I was in university, the Second City troupe from Toronto came through Ottawa. And sadly, I had fallen and down some stairs and broken my arm, so I couldn't do the workshops. And then I went off and hitchhiked across Canada and worked on an oil rig for a year and sort of estranged myself from my family. And then upon my return, which was sort of routed through California, went back to London and Ontario and had a rapprochement with my father. Then I went to Toronto. This was in 1978 spring. And then I started hanging out at Second City every night, and they wrote things, and they improvised things, and they wrote their own stuff, and they were funny, and it was like, this is the gig. And they paid me. Part of the deal with my dad was when I told him I wanted to be an actor, which was kind of worse than coming out, and because I've never come out because I'm not, I'm straight, The idea of coming out as an actor was sort of frightening. And my dad took it well, but he said, just don't be a waiter. Don't be a bartender. Be an actor. Because we had been in New York a few years before with my parents, and every bartender and waiter was a wannabe actor. So Second City paid people. So I hung out there, and I started taking workshops. At the back of the theater, there were a bunch of guys that were doing SCTV or starting to do it. And there was John Candy and Gene Levy, and occasionally they would do sets, the improv sets with the actors on stage, where Peter Torquay, Catherine O'Hara, who else was in that company? Marty Short. Owen Marty Short. So John would go up and do improvs. Now, John Candy wasn't John Candy at that moment. He was a kind of a larger-than-life guy in Toronto. He had done a movie called The Silent Partner with Christopher Plummer, which was not a comedy, but John and I got to talking. He's a talker, and as you might see, I am too. So I was doing these workshops with other actors. We started to doing our own workshops, and I said, well, wouldn't you like to come by and help us at these other sort of improv workshops, which he did. Wow. We pooled our money. He wouldn't take it. And he came by for about 4 or 5 Saturdays and hung out with us and taught us a lot about improv. I got to be an extra on SCTV. I take the water away from John at the Bob Hope Open Desert Golf Classic. I'm dressed as an Arab.
I've watched that 100 times. Now I'm going to watch it again, and I'll know who you are.
I'm 21 years old, but I'm the Arab that takes... I'm desperate to get on camera. I'm whatever. All the other extras or background people who were all workshop people were a little bit miffed at me. There's this guy, short, bald guy with a big cigar, sort of very Chicago, very Jewish Chicago guy. And I said, who's that? And it was Bernie Solins, a producer of Second City Chicago. No, I'm dressed as an Arab with the staff and the whole thing. And I go up to Bernie at the SCTV taping, and I go, hi, I'm John Kapelos. I'd like to audition for Second City Chicago. Are you ready, kid? And I said, yeah, I'm ready. So I told my dad that I had a job in Chicago, which was a lie, or a little stretch. I borrowed his credit card and took a Greyhound bus to Chicago, spent 4 days there and auditioned for Second City and got in. And that's a much longer story. But Del Close. And I went down there with John's blessing and also Steve Campman, who was in the company at Second City in Toronto at the time. Very funny writer, performer. And that's how I got into Second City. And the day I auditioned for Second City in Chicago, which was August 4th, 1978, not that I remember, I called my mother and I said, I got a job. And she said, well, your father told me you already had the job. I had to audition for it. And she said, there's a package here from the U.S. consulate. Now, I'm a dual citizen. My mother was born in Boston. I said, well, open it. And it was my U.S. passport.
Oh, nice.
So I said, adios, Kenyatta. That's when I was so glad to be living in the USA, as Linda Ronstadt was singing back then.
Is it true that you were in such a good group at Second City that they hid you from SNL?
That's true. Bernie didn't want Lorne and gang to see us, and we were in the main company, so he took them backstage, and they hired all the practical theater people, Gary Kroger, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, etc. I don't know personally, in the retrospect, whether I would have been good SNL material, A, and B, whether I would have stood the shit show that is Saturday Night Live.
Did they pull from Second City for the Gene Dumanian season? Because that was that weird in-between season between Dick Ebersol and...
As a matter of fact, they did. And interestingly enough, Eddie Murphy came to workshop with us the August before he went on the air. And he was this really young black guy with headphones that just wouldn't talk to anybody. I don't blame him, because we're all these white assholes that sort of were kind of looking at him. When I look back on it, I thought he was a bit of a dip, but then I look back on us, and I think we were a little bit of our own club, too. Tim Kazurinsky brought him to Chicago to have him improvise with us, which he did, sort of. But he was young, scared, I think. Yeah. In his own way. He didn't show that. He was very, very to himself. Not unfriendly, but not particularly friendly either. But yeah, that was the Gene Dumanian year.
Being in Chicago, is that how you met John Hughes?
Yeah, I met actually Brandon Tartikoff and John Hughes. There are a bunch of people I met at the front bar who came to the city, Second City. I'd come around during the show, and they'd sneak out and have a drink or at the intermission. And I remember once I got admonished by one of my fellow actors because I bought drinks for the producers. Oh, God, that was such a mild thing to do. But John Hughes came to the show, I think once, maybe just to see the improvs. But he never, let me correct myself. I don't think he actually came to see the show. He came to see the set, which we call the improvs. And the improvs were always free and still are, I believe. So, but he and I connected at an audition when I did an audition for 16 Candles.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, that was when I really, and it was funny because we sort of had the same Midwestern milieu happening in us. We could remember songs from, CKLW in October 1967,
Well, when you'd finished 16 Candles, which is a movie that I used to, one summer, it was just, let's watch 16 Candles every day.
You owe me $50.
Okay.
Oily bohunk.
What's your Venmo? Yes. And then the Breakfast Club comes around, and the role of Carl. By the way, the whole movie is iconic to Gen X kids. I'm sure it is to a lot of other people too. But that was the movie. That was our movie, because all of us.
We're getting a lot of people that have never seen them nowadays. I mean, 20-somethings that. No, my father or my grandfather made me watch that.
Yeah.
So it's slipping away, but
it had all the archetypes though from kids in school in the mid '80s. It had almost every archetype in it, including the janitor, including the principal. The principal being a kind of a jerk.
Principal being Vern, right? I mean, just a minor correction. I think that Vern is a teacher, not a principal.
Oh, I thought he was the principal.
He's a bit of a loser teacher.
Yeah.
He's a teacher that's on the slow track person.
Yes.
That's my interpret of his character.
Well, and you hear that conversation between the two of you in the room.
You took a teaching position because you thought it'd be fun, right? Thought you could have summer vacations off? And then you found out it was actually work. That really bummed you out.
And I have a lot of teachers in my family, and most of them are pretty noble. But I know a few friends of mine that became teachers thought exactly that.
Yeah.
It's a effing breeze, man. And my brother is a professor, and respectfully, I mean, he does get really long summers off. So what the hell?
So when Moranis was there, he was only there for a week? Now, was it he just had a different take on the character altogether?
My understanding of it is, and I don't know whether there's footage that remains or how long he was there for, but let's say he was there for an indeterminate amount of time. The way John Hughes, he could have been there for a couple weeks, and they might have worked for 3-4 days. Rick had this sort of, and I respect Rick entirely. I think he's great. I think he's funny. I've never met him, but he's part of the Second City, universe. He wanted to play him sort of in a very character-y way as a Russian guy with gold teeth, sort of rich, full mouth of gold teeth. And he wanted to play with the wad of keys between his legs, sort of provocatively. And John said, "Did you read the script? I mean, the janitor went to this school. I mean,
yeah.
And Rick said, yeah, but this is, the way I want to do it." So they apparently maybe have worked. I don't know the exact details, but they had a parting of the ways. It didn't exactly work because, just to back up a bit, when you asked me about 16 Candles, when I was shooting that, John said to me, I got this script, The Breakfast Club. You're going to love it. I got a part in it for you. You're going to be bigger than Bill Murray.
Mm-hmm.
Said that to me. And aside from the Bill Murray part, which was, okay, I was really hopeful that he was going to offer me the part of The Breakfast Club. So I'm in New York working off Broadway with Second City, opening a show, Orwell That Ends Well at the Village Gate. It's, January 1983 or 2 or whatever. I look in the trade papers and I see that Rick Moranis is shooting The Breakfast Club. Fuck. Trade papers. And literally that afternoon, now they had been shooting for about 2-3 weeks. Literally that afternoon, I got a call from my agent saying, John would like you to fly into Chicago, where I still have my apartment and stuff, and do The Breakfast Club. So I left my company in New York and flew to Chicago. So just a roundabout way of saying, when I got there, I'd heard that Rick had done it. I guess they had committed to him to do it. John said to me, should have got you in the first place, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would have been a very strange role, a very strange character had it stayed with the original casting, because everything seemed to work in that movie. Carl, you being Carl, worked.
Tim, to be honest with you, if you read the first draft of the script, you would think it would be a very, very, it would be a very different movie than it currently stands as.
Is that because did you ad-lib a lot of the dialogue or improvise a lot?
I wouldn't attribute that to me directly as much as I would say that John's first draft had a lot more aspects to it. There was a bunch of middle-aged women in the one of the gyms that are doing a Jane Fonda type workout class, 80s type then. Mm-hmm. So that's going on in the school at that time. And I think that there was some sort of other activity, maybe auto shop or something. I don't know. There might have been other activities that a high school would use on a Saturday. The first draft had a lot of extraneous stuff, and eventually it came down to that. And that's why a lot of the stuff that I improvised, where I told them where they're all going to be today, like 40 years from now back then, there's a whole sequence where I tell them each where they're going to be. And that was cut out of the movie.
And that was at the scene when you said hello to Brian and mentioned the clock. That was
when I say, by the way, that clock's 20 minutes fast. I go in, I go, hey, you think of what it's like to be a janitor? You think I'm just a shithead? And then I go into this whole long monologue. And at the end of it, I put them down, and then I go, by the way, that clock's 20 minutes fast. So they took that whole monologue out, and basically they just had the beginning and the end, which shocked the hell out of me when I went to the Alfred Hitchcock soundstage to loop the movie. And Dee Allen, the editor, put her arm around me, which was kind of uncharacteristic because she wasn't very effusive. And she said to me, and I quote, "When I cut Gene Hackman out of Bonnie and Clyde," and I went, wait, what do you mean when you cut She goes, "Remember that whole segment where you tell them where they're going to be 30 years from now?" And then she went like this with her hands. Mm-hmm. And then she said, "There's a piece in the basement where I go, when I was a kid, I wanted to be John Lennon." That scene had a few other nuances. There are parts of that scene. And then a few other things that we had shot just gone. So I felt like crying. I felt like bursting into tears. And I went through that session biting my lip going, because a lot of the guts of my performance were taken out. And then all that stuff is available on YouTube now?
Yeah. I watched it on TikTok. A lot of times. I'm a TikTok junkie, but it's all over TikTok. It's
I say that Judd Nelson's going to shoot a fatal dose and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's on TikTok?
Yeah.
Well,
everything's on TikTok.
$50.
Yes. They don't have residuals coming from whoever owns it.
But they do have the 40th anniversary coming back out into theaters this weekend.
Yeah.
So that's, Jaws came out last weekend and took number 2 at the box office. And, Breakfast Club's going to come out, and I think it'll do, the same. I think the idea of Hollywood rebooting films has become such a bad taste that someone realized that, hey, you can make money by putting the original movie back out and having new audiences see it, which I think is a great idea. The New York
Times had an article about that last week about. Oh yeah. But, if you also looked at the NY Times yesterday, you see that the box office this year is the worst it's been in the last 10 years. So, yeah, I mean, I think Hollywood is, scrambling at the moment.
Is that due to content not being
I also think that with the release of the Criterion, the Breakfast Club on Criterion, I think that they also remastered and remastered the print, didn't they?
Yeah, they rescanned the print. Yeah.
Well, I would say emphatically that the Breakfast Club movie that you see right now is the film that it should be. It should not be re-edited. It should not be rejiggered. No. I mean, what they put in it and what they kept out of it, as much as I would have loved my scene to be in there and that stuff, you can see it in its shitty VHS, online. But in actual fact, Dee Dee was right. John was right. The reason they took out that stuff where I told them where they're all going to be is it was too much on the head of the subtext of the movie. And the subtext is basically we all become our parents.
Yep.
We all, which is kind of one of the major rivulets of the subtext. And for me to tell them where they're all going to be, funny and interesting and clever, though it may have been, I think in terms of the overall structure of the film, gulp, I have to say it was not to be. Shouldn't have been. But I mean, the director's cuts and those other things you're talking about, when they reassemble stuff, it brings to mind another question, though. I mean, the digitization of people after they're dead, I have a little issue with that. But
yeah, I do too.
Speaking of becoming your parents, I read this anecdote today. Did you give some acting guidance to Judd Nelson and Emilio Estevez, citing Martin Sheen without knowing that Martin was Emilio's dad? Is that true?
Yeah, this is a horrible story, but it's true.
All right, if it's horrible,
No. I mean, I've told it often enough.
Okay.
And I hope Emilio someday figures it out that I was really, Breakfast Club was my first kind of, I'd done 16 Candles, I did Thief, I'd done Tootsie, I'd done a few other things, but I did about 4, whatever. Yeah. Breakfast Club was kind of and these guys at lunch, I mean, not at lunch, but during the day, the younger actors, Molly and Anthony Michael Hall, had to go off to school. So they put their doubles in there, to sit there, and they'd come around and do my coverage while they were off at school. But Judd and Emilio, so they sit there in their places, doing off camera, and they're like sticking pens up their noses and like doing all sorts of stuff, putting bottles on their heads to try to distract me when I'm doing my close-ups, right? So I'm thinking there, I don't know who Emilio is. He's Emilio Estevez, he's Judd Nelson. I don't know who these guys are. I mean, they might be from Hollywood. So I was thinking, and I said, you guys, and this is exactly what I did. I said, you guys would have been great when Martin Sheen's on Apocalypse Now and he's having his heart attack, and you would have been stuffing pens up your noses and laughing at him and just pointing fingers at him. And here he is going, I need your help. And you just would have been laughing. And then Emilio's face totally went white. I mean, totally went white. And I looked at him, and John came up to me, Hughes, and he whispers in my ear, Martin Sheen is Emilio Estevez's father. I'm going, no. I mean, no, you couldn't be. Of all the fucking people I chose in the world, no.
Oh, my God.
And I look at him and I go, Emilio, I didn't know. Walls were up.
No.
Walls were up. And to this day, dude doesn't talk to me.
Oh, man.
Well, he seems to have some, I don't know if they're issues, I don't want to say issues, but there was that recent Brat Pack documentary Matthew Modine was involved with. And
I'd stay away from that stuff.
Yeah, and he seemed
I heard about it, I hear about it.
He seemed guarded, still, But it was cool if you grew up in that era and you idolized all those guys.
He started directing a lot, and he was doing a CSI or some show, and I went into audition for him, right? Hey, how are you, Emilio? Wouldn't shake my hand. Now, I haven't really said this out loud. I have nothing against the dude. I like him. I like him a lot. I mean, it's me that effed up. So I also do an episode of West Wing. So in between, I'm working with Martin Sheen, and I go, hey, listen, and I tell him the story, right? And Martin says to me, sometimes my son doesn't have much of a sense of humor. A little bit too seriously is what he said. That was the actual line. So my son takes himself a little bit too seriously. Said only like a father can.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Emilio, if by chance you're watching this, you need a job when you're directing something.
I'll text him. Make sure he watches this one.
I meant it. I meant it totally. I mean, what the frig frag pollywag did I know? I was a Chicago actor. Right. I was under the gun. I was trying to be funny, desperately trying to be funny. And I stepped in the middle of a big pile of mud. That's the story.
Certainly that can be forgiven, I would think.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's one of the horrible realities of being me. Sometimes it's better than walking up to a woman that you think is pregnant and isn't. And I've done that before, too. And I've learned to keep my mouth shut in situations. Things happen when you hit 50, and
yeah,
things occur to you. Maybe you guys are too young, too. But
oh, no. All of us, but
you know what I mean? It's like sometimes you just step in it and you go, oh God.
Yeah.
And like maybe, because I'm so glib and stuff, they just didn't believe that I was, oh, he must have known that Martin Sheen was his father. Why would he have chosen that name?
There was a producer of a morning show down the hall from mine years ago in a different radio station, and she had a baby, and it was a couple months later, and I said, "Oh, are you pregnant again?" And she just turned around and stared at me because no, she wasn't pregnant again. She just never lost the weight, and I felt terrible, and she didn't speak to me again. So,
well, I did it at a function, and it was in front of a lot of people. I'm sure people are just. If they ever see me on TV, let me tell you a story about him.
I was walking with my baby in the stroller at like 23, 24 years old in the neighborhood. And there was this couple walking, and I thought she was pregnant. She said, "Oh, how old's your baby?" And I was like, 9 months. And I was like, "When are you due?" And she was like, "I'm not." And her husband goes, "That's why we're walking." And I was like, oh my gosh!
At least he had an escape route on that.
Yeah.
I was like, shit! I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
2 weeks ago, I'm in a Chick-fil-A restaurant with my son. He likes to eat the Chick-fil-A, and this is the first time this has happened. I'm talking to the lady because he's kind of acting up, but he's also being nice to the lady in the booth next to me. And she goes, "Is that your grandson?" And I said, "Listen, I was 50 when he was born. I can't help it, but I will take him to T-ball. But now I know what it feels like." So I expect more of that as he gets a little older.
Not as bad as when you're with your wife and they think it's your daughter.
Yes. Barry in The Sniffing Accountant is one of the most iconic episodes of Seinfeld. It's right up there, The Sniffing Accountant. You just reading off the script, or did you improvise a lot of that? I know Seinfeld was heavily scripted. I had to do a lot of
cocaine for that show.
Yes, to get ready.
I had to practice for months. I stayed up for weeks and weeks. Seriously, it was one of those things where I had really long hair at that time, what was left of it. And it was one of these things where they called me in on a Wednesday and said, "Listen, can you be over at MTM Radford where they shot Seinfeld in 20 minutes?" They, literally they faxed me over the sides. I went over there and I read for it. And they said, "Could you stay here?" And I went, "Yeah, okay, we're going to have a network reading in about an hour. You're hired." So I was kind of in my, I think, shorts and stuff or whatever when I went for the audition. I was thrust into it. So the whole sniffing thing, then I had to sort of read this. I didn't know the whole script. I only had my sides. And I watched them go through the whole run through of the show when you'd get to do that with the network. So by the end of that Wednesday night, and then I was thrust into action. Thursday, I think Friday we shot. But I was a little bit intimidated on that set. Because they're a well-oiled machine. And I have to say, when I came into the Breakfast Club, as I did a little late, it was a little bit like coming into the school in the middle of a school year, and people are sort of like, "Oh, who is he?"
Yeah, the new guy.
Yeah, and it's not, and that's kind of my, when you come onto shows or when I come into series, a lot of it is like you're coming into a well-oiled machine and you just have to fit in, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm pretty good at anyway, because, I learned that early on. I have to say Seinfeld was a bit intimidating. I find Jerry to be, he was nice, but not particularly, Julia, I knew her from Second City, of course, and from Saturday Night Live, her experience getting there, and her husband, Brad. I mean, Julia's phenomenal. I mean, she's one of the finest people I've met in this game. And Tom Chironis, the director, I think he's Greek American. Not that we had much Greek buddy stuff going on. But as I said, Michael Richards, and of course our fearless leader, Larry David, were the ones that I was sort of most attuned to, because I had to do this scene with Michael at the end, and where that scene. Where he is at the bar. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, Michael is a force of nature. And when you're improvising, when you're on stage with him, when he's working, he's one of the hardest working guys I've seen. And I know I'm coming back to this thing, but, he would work the script and thinking about it, and you see him pacing around. And then even during rehearsal, he'd do his stuff and you'd be, oh, geez, that kind of thing. So not having had much experience with him that way, in the scene that we shot at the bar, Larry comes up to me and he says, listen, before we shoot anything, audience, full audience, we're about to shoot. He says, listen, whatever you do not laugh. You don't know what Michael's going to do. And you cannot queer the take. Just use that expression. You can't mess it up. Because, we don't know what he's going to do, and he probably won't ever do it again, because that's his nature. We won't even do it twice, even if it's funny. And we need to keep everything that he does, right? So just hang in there. Play it straight. Now, yeah, I'm not great at playing it straight. I can, and I do. And I'm, but it wasn't an experience. I really wasn't ready for the deluge of shit, funny comedy stuff that was going to come my way. So we start doing the scene. Now, as you can see, stage right is upstage. Stage left is where the audience is. And Michael's to my right, and they're shooting. All the cameras are sort of to my left. So we start shooting, and he does stuff like the bar hits his head, right? And he puts a cigarette in his mouth. He drinks a beer with it, and he goes, sometimes I feel like to feel good all the time, and all this. and like the audience is going ape shit crazy, laughing. And I am just going, oh God, he's doing all this stuff that wasn't scripted, or that we, in between the stuff, in the lines that he does, And so what I did is I started biting the inside of my upstage right cheek. And when you watch it, if you ever watch it again, every now and then, if you see me from behind, you'll see me clenching. Because what I'm doing is biting down like bejesus on the inside of my cheek. So I'm just doing this, And since it was upstage, I figured it's not going to, So I didn't laugh. All the cameramen were laughing. Everybody was laughing, I mean, it was like, the mice were laughing.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I didn't laugh, and I saved the takes, and they used all the great stuff, the stuff that he was just aces on, which was usually first take stuff. And then I go home and I look inside my mouth.
You're bleeding.
A chunk out of the inside of my cheek.
Oh man.
It was worth it.
But you could see with him, when we were 9-10 years old watching Fridays, you could see with him that he ate that whole show up. He just came alive. He would play a little boy playing with army men, or he did the famous Andy Kaufman segment, which he was in on.
I have to say,
I worshipped him as a kid.
He was funny. The Andy Kaufman bit he did was I think better than Andy Kaufman in a way, but that's me.
He sold it. And, the other cast members didn't know. Jack Burns knew. He knew. But he sold it better than Andy did.
Yeah, that was a missed opportunity, for him. I think, and Larry David, too. I think Larry was good on that show.
Yeah, he was.
I was speaking of improving and Hughes. You were also Dino. Now, was any of the Dino stuff? That had to be fun just at that table alone. But was any of that?
Well, with those guys, kick it, eat it. Come on, the guy that was talking like this.
Yeah.
Those guys were, and then when Michael Hall goes into that sort of his black rap talk,
yeah.
It's I don't know how much we improvised around that moment, but that was a pretty, for me, a bare bones dialogue scene. I didn't have much to do or say in that except wear the freaking hat and be this.
Tell me something. What's a beautiful broad like you doing with a malaka like this, huh?
It's purely sexual.
No shit.
She's into malakas, Dino.
The word malaka, do you know what it is?
No, I do not know what it is.
It is a very derogatory term in Greek, which basically means jagoff, masturbator. And it's used quite frequently by guys and, like, dude, the guys that jag off, the reals, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a very but it's a very derogatory, very dirty, not a very pleasant term. My mother, who was alive at the time, and sadly isn't now, was president of the Greek Ladies Society of Canada at the time. Of Canada, the entire country. The big wig in the Greek community. And John asked me, he said, what would a Greek guy say at a bar like this? I said, oh, Malaka. I said, oh, that's funny. I like the way that sounds. Use that. I mean, the same as the line, the John Lennon line in Breakfast Club. These are a lot of my lines that ended up in the movies. So I used Malaka. My mother was incensed. Not that she didn't talk to me, but she was pretty ticked off. Couldn't you have chosen another word? I mean, why would you use that word? My God. Because I didn't know every teenager or high school kid was going to be using Malaka.
Yeah.
For John Hughes language.
I have a different show, but I heard an interview once with Dave Thomas, who was also in Second City. And I'm sort of paraphrasing what he said, but he said that improv lends itself to drama as much as it does comedy in a way. Do you agree with that? Does it help with that? Or I'm just an actor and I'm going to do my craft?
No, I mean, I think improvisation and the improvisational approach can help in all sort of types of media. I mean, even in newscasting, I think. I mean, I think that if you have a way of understanding. Okay, let me just limit it to.
Well, I know what you're saying. I took it for radio, and it helped. Just to help me think of things on the fly on air. I took it.
That's right, and also one of the best acting lessons I've learned is where you learn a script, and then they say, "Okay, I want you to do the same scene, but I don't want you to use any of the same words. But I want you to do so." If they said answer the phone, it's like pick that up. So you have to do, every line has to be different.
Wow.
So, I mean, this is a scene that you've learned that's maybe written by Chekhov or something. and then you go, okay, now we're going to improvise this scene for you to find out what's behind it. I don't want you to use any of the dialogue, but I want you to use every line the same. So if you want her to go to bed, tell her, I think you should take a nap. And that improvisational exercise, just as an actor, helps you understand what's behind the words. Because even as we're talking now, you guys are formulating, what am I going to say? What am I thinking? What is this? We're always sort of in the moment of listening and also anticipating when it's our moment to either say something or interject or maybe add to the conversation. So if you can use that sort of improvisational technique and ability to fall away the performance aspect and open up the listening aspect, even, and then knowing what your lines might be even, right? So right. It's a multi-layered approach, but it works. It works if you're skilled. I mean, you see concert musicians and they can't always be looking at what they're doing because they're working on so many levels, So,
right.
I think improvisation is, circa 2025 is a must for any theater school student. I mean, it wasn't when I started in 78, it was a method, And right. I think now it's more of it can be employed as a tool if understood properly, but it has to be understood properly. You have to know the music in order to not play the music or to play it improperly or to play it differently, I should say, not improperly. It's like jazz. You have to know the form.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to get too esoteric, but
and to be able to play within that form.
Yes.
Yeah, and John Hughes would very specifically not let people who didn't know how to improvise because then they're just spinning their wheels and repeating stuff, and they're not adding to it. And they're in their heads trying to think of what's funny, what should I say next, as opposed to being in the scene.
Right.
And when you're in a situation like that, it's like that's a horror show.
And it does help when you're interviewing certain people. I interviewed Pat Boone a couple of months ago, and he's in his 90s, and I had a whole set list of questions I was going to ask him. But once he started talking, I'm like, I'm just going to let him talk, and I'm going to pick up on what he's saying. And it was an interesting thing to interview somebody that my grandparents liked, my parents liked. I didn't necessarily like him because until he did the metal album, but using that ability that I learned to be able to go back and forth with a guy like him was useful to me.
Yeah, I think that And there's a lesson you learn in improvisation, and I think you learn this in writing and in other forms. I certainly learned it in music, composing, is that you have to take advantage of the mistakes. Sometimes you make a mistake or do something that's like, what the frig frag? That's more interesting than what I was thinking, where I was going. And if you could take advantage of the mistakes of those moments, then and not mistakes as much as well, they are mistakes sometimes, and sometimes they're just wonderful happenstances.
Yeah, happy accidents.
And happy accidents. And the other thing is there were moments on stage at Second City when I'd be improvising and I'd say something to an actress. I was doing a scene with one of the women in the company once, and I said it was a first date scene or something, and something happened behaviorally in the scene where the audience went nuts. And we were videotaping, had this crude videotape system, and I said, what happened there? And it was a very small moment of behavior. And like sometimes you don't even know what's happening until you either reflect on it or go, oh, and you weren't even planning it, or maybe it came out of something. Then now I'm getting a little bit too esoteric, but behavioral moments are what you're after, really, kind of.
Right. Yeah.
And when you can mine those moments, I mean, there's a moment in the Philadelphia story when Jimmy Stewart's drunk and Cary Grant's with him, and he burps, he goes, excuse me, and Cary Grant improvised the line back to him, and it's in the film. Now, I didn't know it was improvised, but I saw it recently, and I heard it was, and you can tell there's that moment of real alive spark in their communication. And
right.
That's what you want all the time, right?
Yeah, it's more natural.
We did have one of our Patreons ask for you to talk about Forever Night a little bit.
Sure. Shot the pilot here with Farhad Mann and Rick Springfield with New World Television. And we did this whole pilot, and it wasn't picked up. And then it was called Nick Knight. And then they picked up the show, and I was the only person. Then they brought me up to Toronto, and I reshot the whole pilot again. It was like repeating a year of school, but this time with a different cast. I knew my lines. I'd put on a few pounds, so I looked a bit different. And I really enjoyed the big thing about Forever Night for me, career-wise, was, as my father said to me, just become an actor, don't become a bartender. When I got to Second City, I knew that rehearsal time was one thing, but stage time is like flight time. It's like being up in the sky as opposed to being in a flight simulator. It's the same with performance. I'm sure it's the same with being on the air as opposed to, it's like any experience. You really don't experience it until you're really doing it. And part of my problem with being in movies, and I wanted to be in the movies as I had been, is the more I did movies, and I had done, at that point, I think I had done internal affairs before I did. So I'd done a fair number of really good movies. But my whole raison d'etre for being in the movies was to get more relaxed in front of the camera. And Forever Night, 48 episodes got me I must have done, my brother and I did the math one Christmas. I did like 2,000 shows at Second City. I forget how many. But I must have done and I'm not a number guy, but I must have done 48 episodes of Forever Night really got me relaxed in front of the camera. And you have to love, respect, and understand where the camera is, but you also can't be obsessed with it. You can see, I can see, at least when I watch films, I can see certain actors that are so aware of the camera's presence that they're almost, it's almost like they're avoiding this sort of area, Mm-hmm. And, you have to be aware of it. You have to know how to use it. You have to know what angle to be at. I wish more cameramen early on in my career would say, hey, move your chin here. But overall, it's a very crafty thing, literally a crafty thing where you have to get to know it, love it, understand it, and then forget about it all at the same time. If any of you guys ever perform or do singing, it's a lot like forgetting that the microphone's there and just doing your thing.
Right.
And forget that you're recording with 5 guys and, the mix is going to be this and all that stuff, which I've also done. Performance is something where you have to be aware and then unaware of that stuff. What I mean to say is you be aware of it, respect it, and then
I know it's there, but then just do the thing that you're there to do.
Your own business. Look after your own garden, because if you're not acting up to speed, then it ain't going to work.
Do you have any projects you got coming out that we should watch out for?
Right now, I'm rewriting a script. Where is it? I think I threw it on the floor. So, I'm trying to produce a few things that get a little bit more proactive in that realm. Nothing major that's coming out at the moment. I've got a lot of stuff that's either going to be in the can that we're shooting. So right now I can be seen whirring and streaming platforms all across this world and different things. But
and in the box set for Forever Night, which the listener who asked that question, Roby, wanted us to let you know that he loved it so much he bought the DVD set. So hopefully you're getting a check for that.
I got an opportunity to write an episode and direct an episode on Forever Night, and I directed the episode of More Permanent Hell, and I wrote an episode, and I really, really enjoyed that experience. I wish they hadn't jettisoned me after they decided to go to a different cast after my session on my time on Forever Night, and I told James Perry I said, "You're making a mistake." They left CBS and went to USA Network and decided to get a younger partner for Nick and a woman, and they wanted to bring me into the desk and be the captain. And I said, and reduce my pay and reduce my work. And I said, why would I want to do Cagney Lacey? Get in here. It ain't what I want to do. Yeah. And sayonara. And I think the show is going to suffer. And people love the third season, and let them love it.
No.
Well, I'm telling you, I'm working on this script called Traveling with My Father. It's got a good chance of being made into a feature film. I ask you to cross your fingers. Yeah. Hopefully we'll be doing a show about that one. We're going to be hopefully shooting it in both Greece and Australia. And that's what I'm working on. We finished a draft today, and we're submitting it to producers on September 9th, which also happens to be my wedding anniversary. Yeah. So a big shout out to my wife on that day, too.
Well, we'll have everyone listening collectively cross their fingers at the same time.
How many years?
What?
9922. We got married in 2022 because I'm a late bloomer, okay? I got 9922. I was asked at a party a couple of years, about 6 months ago, when's your wedding anniversary? My wife was next to me, and I think I don't drink, but I think I maybe had a half a glass of wine or something. And I went like this, and she looked at me, and she... It was not a good ride home that night. I went. So now I know it's 9922. But we got married. I got married later in life. That's worth it. Let's talk about that in a personal podcast.
Sure. I can relate to that.
Good. Somebody can.
45. That's when I got married after years of goofing around.
If only I was 45. No.
John, thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you very much. I hope that we get to see one another again sometime.
Hey, I'm back, Mr. Sam Elliott. And I want to talk to you about one of the places I like to go whenever I'm in the Atlanta area, called Atlanta Pizza and Euro. And they've proudly been serving the East Metro Atlanta area for over 40 years. Atlanta Pizza and Euro is a place to be this summer. I don't know if they have Coors. Coors is a banquet beer. But they are featuring 3 tavern breweries, a night on Ponce. That's an IPA, and it's now available on draft. Atlanta Pizza and Euro has the best gyros, pizzas, hot subs, and Greek and Italian specialties around. Family-owned and operated, independent restaurants are a dying breed. And Atlanta Pizza and Euro continues to be a local favorite, serving the east side of Atlanta for over 30 years. Hey, Mike's food truck is out and about, so if you see the food truck, run up. Contact Mike at 770-483-6228 if you're interested in booking the food truck for your corporate or private event. Tuesday nights, they got team trivia from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Bring your smartest friends and test your trivia knowledge against the best Conyers has to offer. Hey, they're open for dine-in or takeout Monday through Friday from 11 to 9, Saturdays 12 to 9, They're closed on Sunday, which is Lord's Day, dude. Another fine sponsor of Radio Labyrinth is LDI Repro Printing. Do you have commercial or residential construction printing needs? Well, what are you waiting for? Contact LDI Repro Printing of Athens. They've been in Athens, Georgia since 2005 with fast turnaround and affordable prices. Call 706-316-9366 or email them at athens@ldiline.com.
Radio Labyrinth is brought to you this week and every week by our wonderful sponsors, the Punchline Comedy Club in Atlanta, Georgia. Coming up at the Punchline, September 11th through the 13th, comedian Greg Warren. September 18th through the 20th, comedian Ben Bankus, who is from Canada. Brad Upton appears, it looks like one date on the 21st of September, and then rounding out the month, September 26th through the 28th is Eddie Ift, who is a very funny comedian himself and has a podcast too. That's the Punchline. Go to punchline.com for tickets and information. And next week, we will begin giving away a pair of tickets to one lucky Patreon member. Hey, let's do some plugs. Boy, thank you again, Jeff, for what a great get that was. I just assume you're friends with a lot of character actors, so keep them coming. And great job, everybody. Even Tim, you did okay. And thank you to Roby Neely, who submitted a question. He is a Patreon member, and if you're a Patreon member and we have a guest, you'll know ahead of time, and we'll invite you to ask some questions if you're a fan, and obviously Roby was. Just go to patreon.com/Tim Andrews and sign up. There's a tier for you. There's a tier for everyone on there. But you can also become a Radio Labyrinth executive producer, and that's $25 a month. And once you sign up for that, you get a t-shirt from our merch store, whatever stickers we have, and of course you get to interact with us and get all the benefits that come with being a producer. Let's say thank you to our most recent Radio Labyrinth producer, Michael Walker, and also our continuing members, John Allen, Matt Carter, Chris Chandler, Mike D., Jim Fortner, Roby Neely, Jeff Peterson, Tim Slayton, and Brian and Chelsea Smith. Remember, if you like this show, please give it a thumbs up there. Click that little thumbs up thing and share it with your friends. Subscribe, turn on all the things that YouTube people need you to do. Please do it. And we love your comments. We didn't get any from last week, I don't believe, or I haven't looked yet. But if we did, we'll read them next week because we had a great time talking to John. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts, just go over to the YouTube and subscribe. It'll help us out immeasurably. Jeff, you got a good shout out on Fun for All Ages podcast. I want to encourage everybody to check that podcast out with Frank Santopadre, the former co-host with Gilbert Gottfried.
I didn't expect to hear the C word on a show about the Love Boat.
No, neither did I, but he went for it. It was a good episode. Well, unless I'm forgetting anything, we'll talk to you next week. And please remember to
keep it
canon.
What do you say, all good things come to an end?
What's that got to do with this show?
Lost in the radio.